reporting on the games you love by people who love to game. The MMO Reporter Network. Hi everybody, I am here at the Carbine Studios booth with Chad Moore, lead narrative designer. How's it going, Chad? Nice to see you again.
You know what? We're doing really well. It's great to see you too.
It's a fantastic turnout at your booth. A whole lot of people at your panel. I mean, you're starting to get some really good buzz about the game. That must feel great working the show floor and seeing so many people come by.
We kind of went dark for quite a while after Gamescom 2011. And, it really is inspiring, rewarding when you finally get to show a bunch of work here on the floor and people are really reacting well to it. Like you said, we had a great panel, a great crowd. It's been a really, really good show for us.
And you're actually giving out quite a lot of information now. You've put out information about housing, about war plots, PvP stuff, a little bit more about the paths. So there's really stuff to dig into now. What are you most excited about being able to finally talk about?
Well, I'll tell you, the thing that has really garnered the most positive reaction and feedback, I think, is our housing system. You know, we showed our Dev Speak video that we just released here at PAX at the panel, and people thought it was awesome. We've been showing some members of the press behind closed doors and even sort of deeper dive on the things that are possible with that system. That information will be coming out to the public very soon. But people are just super, super excited about the fact that they're going to have this thing in the world that they can own and they can make their own. So that's probably the most exciting thing, I think, for us here at PAX.
So with the housing, why make the decision, instead of just giving people a house to play with, you're giving them an environment almost to create. They get the plot, but it's not ready for them. They have to clear it. They have to get it ready. Why go that direction instead of just saying, oh, here's a house, here's a bunch of hooks on it, play with it?
I think, for us, the important thing about the housing system is that it's not just a thing that exists, right? Like that it's still a part of the game. So, when you go to your house plot, there's going to be maintenance. There may be some hostile creatures that have shown up, so you need to go out, you need to kill them. You need to tend to your garden or your mine.
We had a guest for a minute there.
But again, the important thing about housing is it's not just a thing you buy and then sort of put on the shelf, right? It's a thing that you interact with all the time. And so giving you not just the house, but a plot of land, I thought was something that was really important to the design of the system.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. You have the plug-in socket system. Can you go over that really quick for people who might not have seen the videos or heard about it?
Yeah, so when you buy your plot of land, there's going to be a lot of things you can do with it. And each plot of land comes with a certain number of what we call plugs. And those are places where you can build things like a garden or a low-gravity jump pad or a mine. Or like an Elden statue that will give you a buff, right? Or a raid portal. They're all different things that you can put in these plugs. So as you develop your land and you get higher level and you get new things out in the world, you can come back and then use those things to sort of keep your land up and make it a more fun place to be.
Right, and you're getting right into things like the raid buffs from the statue. You're talking about the raid portals. Really trying to, it seems like you're trying to take away those steps between the players and the fun. And is that throughout the entire game that you're trying to do that?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about housing in particular, but, our systems overall is, we want players who really invest time and are really into WildStar. We want them to have conveniences, right? So like, hey, if you spend the time and you spend the effort to develop a raid portal on your land, I mean, that's something that means something to you. You've now saved time. You don't have to, let's say, go to the city or go to the place in the world. You can just hit your raid portal, pop in, and go. Those kinds of things are things that you're going to see all the time as people play through WildStar.
And so would it be a safe way to describe it in its simplest form as far as the decoration of your house inside and out? It's working on a hook system that we've seen, but much more elaborate on the outside and pretty much a free place system on the inside, right?
Yeah, I mean, so outside we do exert a little more control just because we want to make sure that, it's always fast out there and that it's a smooth experience. But once you go inside, you can put things on the ceiling, you can float things, you can build things out of the objects that you've created and that you've bought. And so it really can become a personal reflection of who you are. And what's really cool about it is, we haven't talked about this, but logging out in your house, you get rest XP. If you have a lot of cool things in your house, you get even more rest XP. So not only is it cool because it's yours and it looks, it's this reflection of who you are, but you're also getting another advantage in the game because you've decided to get a house.
And there must be a Doctor Who fan somewhere on the Carbine team because, as was described in the panel yesterday, the houses are bigger on the inside than the outside.
Yeah, absolutely. We wanted to, make sure that, hey, as you're developing your house, that there's lots of room inside. There's opportunities for you to expand, to put new wallpapers and new objects, and so we wanted to make sure you had a little extra room. And hey, it's WildStar, so I'm sure that there's some physical description, maybe the Eldon technology, right, that allows you to do that.
Right. Yeah. And so with let's move into a little bit more of the content that you can do. I know you talked at the panel as well about there's going to be dungeons, there's going to be raids. What sort of content are you looking, once you get to the Elder game and you want to do stuff with your groups, what are the different things that you can do? So
we've announced raids, 40-man raids, 20-man raids. We'll have 5- and 10-man dungeons. We've got the war plot system that we've talked about, quite a bit, which is this kind of Elder game group PvP where you develop this death fortress and you fight against each other. One of the things that's kind of near and dear to my heart is what we call the world story, and that's soloable content that basically forwards the story of Nexus and the things that took place here. Why did the Eldon disappear, and what are you going to do about that? And that's episodic content, so it's going to be released over time, obviously culminating in the big resolution of the story of what took place on Planet Nexus. So that's kind of cool for me because obviously I'm kind of the story guy. So, and it's tough nowadays with the way that the MMO market is to strike a balance between your players who play the game more than the developers do and your casual players. What sort of look what approach are you taking to finding a balance between having enough content to keep those really hardcore players going when you got the episodic nature of the Elder game, and yet still not making the casuals feel like they're being excluded because they're not getting through the content fast enough? I mean, the thing about it is you kind of have to do both, right? Like, there's no way that you can avoid doing leveling content. It's absolutely necessary. It's good for the casual players, and you've got to get something for the hardcore to churn through so that when they get there, they have something to do at the end. We just kind of consider both of those two things vital, and we sort of feel like, whereas some developers, they kind of look like they felt that the game ended when you get to cap, we kind of think that that's where actually the game begins. And so we're going to have lots of content, both pre-cap and post-cap. So with the combat, it's very action-based, lots of telegraphing. If people haven't seen WildStar, can you talk about the telegraphing and the action combat part of it? Yeah, so when you play through our game and you're fighting against hostile mobs, you'll see these threat indicators on the ground. And that's basically telling you, don't stand here, stand somewhere else. Every creature has its own set of these telegraphs. They're simpler at the beginning. They'll get more complex, larger, with different patterns, moving patterns, as you get to higher levels. But because we are communicating to you directly in the game, where you don't want to be, it basically makes combat a lot more dynamic. There's a lot more movement. Depending on what class you're playing, there's positional things that you need to take into account. The other part of it that's really cool, though, is not only is it the hostile mobs that are projecting those on the ground, you're also doing that. So if you're in a group, you may look at your buddy and all of a sudden you're going to see like what he's about to cast, whether it's a damage spell or if it's a healing spell, and you're like, oh, there's an area of effect. You're going to run over to where that is before he casts it. So it's a really cool way to communicate between the group without actually having to say anything, and it's been really cool from a group standpoint and making combat more unique. And so along those same lines, is that going to happen in PvP as well? Yep, absolutely. That's exciting. That's going to be very chaotic when you've got all those overlapping telegraphs coming through in PvP. Yeah, I mean, we haven't shown or talked a whole lot about it, but I can say that it really does make for some unique and interesting combat. Speaking of unique and interesting, one of the things we got to see in the press demo yesterday was the new zone, the level 40-something zone in space with the lower gravity, and that seemed really, really different.
I don't know if you're talking about any other zones, but are you looking to have more zones that are unique in such a different way with lower gravity where you super jump every time, basically? Is that going to happen a couple of other times, or is that a one-off?
No, I mean, so, the zone you're talking about is called the Halon Ring, which is basically this zone that takes place in this asteroid belt that's rotating around Planet Nexus. The reason why that zone was important to us is because it has a very strong science fiction theme, right? And since our game is heavily, heavily sort of standing in the science fiction realm, we wanted to make sure that we had a lot of content that really, really reflected that. So that's one of them. You're going to see a lot more zones that are like that. So some zones will be on the surface, some may be, off the surface. And so we just think it's a good mix to continue to remind players, hey, you're in a sci-fi game, you're out in the galaxy, you've come to this cool planet, it's going to be an interesting place to play.
Now, you recently had a big community event, ArcShip, there, and our friends over at WildStar Radio headed down there and took part in that. Why was it so important for you to involve the community in such a big way at this part in development?
I mean, that's kind of an easy question, which is the community is who we're making the game for, right? And so, we thought that it was important to bring in some of our most passionate community people, websites, people like yourself, who are, who've been following us from the beginning and are interested in our game. We want to get those people in. We want to show them the cool things that we're doing, kind of get them in on the inside. And we think that's going to do nothing but sort of get the word out there, right, about what we're doing. I mean, again, we're making this game for you guys, and so why would we, not share these things with some of our most passionate fans?
So what's keeping you? I know your responsibility on the game is the narrative and keeping that going. But when you head home at the end of the day, are you in at the PvE content? Are you hardcore PvP when you get in there on the dev server and trying it out?
I'm more on the PvE side myself. I'll play a little PvP, but I really kind of dig the story stuff. Obviously, that's kind of why I do. So we're doing a lot of things that aren't just necessarily tied to quests. We're doing things like data cubes, which are research notes left behind by the Elden. We have a whole system called the Galactic Archives that is basically your Wikipedia on Nexus that's getting filled in as you play. So, as I play, those are the things I'm looking at. Me and my team are really excited about telling these stories that we've been developing, and so that's kind of the stuff I focus on when I play.
And which path is your favorite?
Probably Soldier, it's funny, I usually play a warrior just because it's kind of a straightforward, kind of direct class. And then Soldier is just something I kind of get, get out there, fight for your faction. I kind of like that.
Awesome. Now, the most important question I think that I have to ask today, Dominion or Exiles?
Exile, absolutely.
Okay, you can stay. Okay, I'll post this video now. That's okay. So thanks so much for your time. Really great to talk to you again.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for coming.